Next week's talk is usually a very popular talk. This time it's titled Lights Out in ... the City of Lights, presented by Jan Kostek. Unthinkable, but it happened recently, December 8th in Paris, a harbinger of things to come. Don't think this affects your investments? Think again. Get a fresh perspective with our annual Open Circle presentation and see what it is in the offing for your retirement portfolio in 23 and beyond. Jan Kostek, MBA, Money Management Investment Advisor. Usually people if you're gonna come, bring paper and pen. People are just like, wait a minute, what's that? Whoa. So bring that and don't knock him over when you rush up here in case you do to say, I want to know a little bit more about that. It's usually kind of a full house, so you might want to make your reservations, but of course you're always welcome just to walk in. This week's presentation, Saving Paradise, presented by Michael Searles. We all know that Lakeside is a paradise, but the Ribera de Chapala faces several environmental challenges that it must meet if we hope to preserve and protect our land, mountains, and lake. Michael, president of a newly formed AC, which is a nonprofit, it's MAS, is here to discuss with us the organization's goals, its collaboration with local and state government, and what we as individuals can do to ensure that Lakeside remains a paradise found rather than a paradise lost. Join me in welcoming Michael.
Get a drink before I start, and a little word of wisdom and advice to all of you. If all of you would get either a plastic or aluminum water bottle, rather than buying the water bottles that you get that are plastic, we see so many of those at the Centro de Acopio, and it's a way just to cut down on the amount of plastic that we see. Good morning, and as usual at Lakeside, it is a beautiful morning. Some of you may be disappointed who came here expecting Benjamin Franklin. Obviously, I'm not Benjamin Franklin. But perhaps I can bring a little bit of the wisdom of Benjamin Franklin to this talk today. Benjamin Franklin said, "Tell me, and I forget. Teach me, and I may remember. Involve me, and I learn." So hopefully, after I finish with this talk, more of you will want to become involved, if only in an individual way, in helping to preserve our lakeside environment. Almost every morning when I look out my window over the lakeside and the mountain, I say, this place is paradise. I would never give this up, and I bet most of you feel the same way. But a paradise is a fragile place. It must be protected and nurtured. And there are threats, very serious threats, that could turn our paradise found into a paradise lost. And confronting those threats and challenges are what I am here to discuss today. There has been much discussion over the last several years about converting our economic model from a take, make, waste economy to a circular economy. That circular economy is a make, use, and recycle. I certainly remember back to the 1950s when there was little need for recycling. Not wanting to be too presumptuous, but I would bet that some of you do too. Why? Well, I remember when soda bottles or soft drinks came in glass bottles, and they had a deposit on them. and you took them back to any store and you got money back. And as a young entrepreneur, I took advantage of this. This was my first experience with the cash economy. Milk bottles were glass, and milk was delivered to your home by the milkman, who then picked up the empties, took them back where they were cleaned, sanitized, and reused. As a matter of fact, most things came in one of several forms: boxes, cans, or glass bottles or jars. I even remember when potato chips came in metal cans, and they were delivered to your house. And when the man came back to deliver more chips, he picked up the metal can and he took it back. Aluminum was occasionally used, but was not that frequent during the 50s. Although a little-known trivia factoid for you, Coors in 1959 was the first company to introduce aluminum cans. It wasn't until the 1970s that we see the widespread use of plastic. Now let me tell you a story about a dump. Well, we all called it the dump, but it was really the Wellesley Recycling Center. And this dump was so amazing that PBS did a special on it. Girl Scouts sold Girl Scout cookies at the dump. Little League sold pancake breakfast tickets at the dump. It was a local hub of activity and community. You always ran into people you knew at the dump. We lived in Wellesley for 30 years. It is an affluent suburb, 12 miles outside of Boston. When we moved into Wellesley, we were shocked when we were told that there was no trash pickup. We had to take everything to the dump. The first trip was an eye-opener. It was landscaped. It had containers for every possible recyclable material. It had a take it or leave it section where you left usable things that you didn't need, and somebody else could pick up something that they fancied. There was a take it or leave it library, and this was in the early 1980s. Every time I look at the Centro de Acopio, I see the potential for a similar dump. Already, we have set up a take it or leave it for English and Spanish language at the Centro de Acopio. So if you're looking for English or Spanish books, please drop by. I am president of a newly formed AC, or nonprofit. Its a public-facing name is MAS, meaning more, in Mexico. But it stands for Movimiento Ambiental Solidario, or in English, the Solidarity Environmental Movement. Our core group is comprised of both Mexican and expat board members, and we are fortunate to have as a volunteer Aurora Michelle. Aurora is the liaison for expat relationships with the municipio and its presidente, also known as the mayor. A bit later, I will talk about our collaboration with both the local and state governments and how working together, we'll be helping to improve the environment at the Ribera de Chapala. Some of you, just to go back and cover a little bit of history on what has been happening in terms of recycling here at Lakeside. About 4 years ago, a citizens committee was formed to initiate recycling in Ajijic. You have probably seen the cestos in the town of Ajijic and West Ajijic. This group that started this, held a Fiesta de Reciclaje here at Lakeside, at Lake Chapala Society in October of 2019 to inform and educate the immediate area of the recycling efforts that were being undertaken, and to encourage the citizens to participate. The local people rapidly accepted this effort, and it got off to an excellent start. They obtained permission to take that recycling to an area that became the Centro de Acopio in West Ajijic. This worked well until the administration took away the truck that was picking up all of the cestos. But thanks to some volunteers in the village, pickups continued. Some of those volunteers who have helped in the past are Tom Thompson of Barber's Bazaar, Judd Cremata, who takes care of the one over at Nicolas Bravo in 16 de Septembre, and even Max Macias, the current delegado, has been helping to pick up some of those cestos when he can. But there's additional need to keep on finding what we call Adopt a Cestos volunteers to continue to help clean out some of those cestos. And then, of course, we all know what happened. The pandemic hit. Like so many other things, the efforts of the Citizens Committee continued, but in a much reduced manner due to the constraints of the pandemic. As life began to come back to normal last spring, the idea, rather than an informal Citizens Committee, an AC should be formed. This AC, which is a nonprofit entity, would initially focus on recycling, but will ultimately grow to really look at all of the threats to our environment here at Lakeside. The formal AC status would allow the AC to negotiate an agreement with the government to guarantee the continued use of the Centro de Acopio. The AC would also be able to petition both not only the local but the state government for additional resources to promote the efforts of the organization. So let me briefly talk about what we've done, or what we've actually been able to do in the last months since the AC was formed. And we just signed the paperwork to become an official AC on December 13th. Presidente Alejandro Aguirre, in his informe, stated he would grant the use of the Centro de Acopio to us and bring utilities provided as a fully functional recycling center. Some of you may not realize this, but when we held that event at Lake Chapala Society back in 2019, we actually were able to get a compactor. That compactor has sat in Tom Thompson's mother-in-law's garage since that date because we couldn't get electricity. And again, thanks to Aurora Michelle, who's been working tirelessly, we're hoping on Monday, because I will be meeting Aurora at the Centro de Acopio on Monday, we will get CFE to hook up our electricity and we'll be able to use our compactor. The formation of the AC was necessary to be able to get an agreement from the municipio granting us the use of the Centro de Acopio, and because of that, we have been able to obtain 18 1,100-liter containers for recycling and 6 135-liter containers. These are smaller recycling containers for things like aluminum, metal, and some of the Tetra Paks. These containers, 8 of the big containers are now in Parque La Cristianía, available for recycling, with 3 smaller containers, and the other ones are at the Centro de Acopio in Ajijic. And this was done as the AC was being formed, thanks to a very generous contribution from both the Sunrise Chapala Rotary Club and the Ahihi Rotary Club. A quick aside, it costs more to get the large bins through the port of Manzanillo than it costs to buy the bins from China and have them shipped to Manzanillo. And it was only through the benefit of the Rotary and additional donations that we were able to get those bins through the port. We're pleased with what we have accomplished in the last month, but there is so much more that we need to do. We face major challenges to be able to continue our recycling efforts. As soon as it's feasible, we want to expand our efforts to other ecological areas here at our Lakeside area. One of our largest challenges is obtaining funds to expand our efforts. We are fortunate to get donations to acquire those large recycling bins. But our goal is to eventually expand recycling beyond just Chapala and Ahihi and the areas between. We want to expand our recycling to Santa Cruz de Soledad, San Nicolas Ibarra, and Atotonilco. All those are part of the municipio of Chapala. Having facilities is wonderful, but we need volunteers to staff those facilities. One of the things we are trying to do with the large recycling bins is to eliminate much of the time that volunteers currently spend sorting recyclables. Each bin is designed to be used for a different recyclable, just like we had at the Wellesley Town Dump. We also need to expand the Adopt a Sesto program until such time as we can get our own trucks to handle the pickup of recyclables in the area. To do this, we need trucks that can pick up recyclables from these cestos and bring them to the various centros de acopio. We are working to see if we can do this with the cooperation of the current government administration and also through a fundraising effort. Even with the trucks, we will need volunteers initially who can help us in terms of picking up the recycling until such time as we build up the recycling to the point that we're earning enough money to hire local people to do this. We also require space to set up these centros de acopio in the various municipios. Again, initially we're going to need volunteers who will come and help us in terms of starting up those centros, helping us with the sorting, helping us with the pickups by the recyclers who come in to pick it up. But eventually, again, the goal is, as the amount of recycling continues, we're going to be able to afford to hire local people and give back to the local economy. We are envisioning cooperating with the local fraccionamientos and businesses to be able to expand our recycling efforts. We have already been discussing the possibility of doing this with one of the fracs. We plan on giving stickers out to the local businesses, recognizing their efforts in cooperating towards recycling and their support of the recycling effort. One of the most important tasks, though, that we have is to educate people as to what is and what is not recyclable. Okay, let's take a break from my litany of tasks, and we're going to have a little quiz. There's not going to be any prizes or anything else, but I'm going to hold up some things and we'll have a show of hands to see if you think it's recyclable or not. And of course, the first thing I did was bring it in a plastic bag. Everybody brings their recyclables in a plastic bag. We're going to encourage you, use a reusable bag. So here we have our first item, the infamous pizza box. Who thinks that's recyclable? Show of hands. See, that's amazing. And this is one of the biggest misconceptions, and I'll show you why. See all that grease? We can't use that. It can't be recycled. Now, if there's not much grease on the top, you can rip it off. That can be recycled. But the greasy part, not so much. This is something that somebody was very generous to drop off recently at the Centro de Acopio. It's great, it's cardboard. But, what do we have on the cardboard? So, what do you think? Not recyclable, right? Many people will think that all plastic, it's plastic, right, should be recyclable. If you check the numbers, it's primarily number 1, number 2, and number 5 that are all recyclable. But even some of the number 1s, like this black plastic, cannot be recyclable. The plastic recyclers do not like black plastic. It goes in the trash. This is an easy one. How many think this is recyclable? No. We cannot recycle styrofoam. Just is not recyclable. How many think this is recyclable? This is a trick question. The top is not recyclable. The bottle is. And all of these have a little plastic sleeve on them. What really helps us is if you just take a scissors and cut that sleeve off. That sleeve is not recyclable. How about this one? Is it recyclable? It's just a tube. A cardboard tube. No, it's not. Again, see, and this is why we need to educate people on what can and cannot be recycled.
Why isn't it?
Because the recyclers don't accept things like that. They're looking for the corrugated cardboard or what we call chipboard. Obviously, the corrugated is something we accept, and the only thing we ask is that you flatten that so it takes up less room. But here's another item. Recyclable, not recyclable. No, and the reason is all of these cups, because they're holding liquid, have a little polyvinyl coating on the inside. That's plastic. It can't go in and be recycled. This is an easy one. Recyclable?
Yeah, but not the lid.
Exactly. This is easily recycled. And one of the things we would ask you to do with these to help us out is if, I'll see if I blow this time, is if you just loosen the top a little, you crush it. Then you can tighten the top, and it's going to take up less room in the cesta or in the bin.
Michael, why the lid on that one and not the water bottle? Why the lid on that container and not...
Because the lid on the either the spray bottles you get or that bottle is not recyclable. This is a simple plastic lid.
Oh, okay.
That's all it is.
Oh, so if it's plastic, it's recyclable?
Yes.
Okay.
Obviously, recyclable. Again, and I do this at home all the time. You press it in the middle. You press it on either side. Now it's flat. And again, it takes up less room in the cestos, and it takes up less room in the bins at the recycling center. Let's see if I can get my equipment back on. This is the thing that until recently, we weren't taking, but we are taking. This is what we call in the US chipboard. You see cereal boxes, cracker boxes, things like that made out of it. This is recyclable. But how about this?
What is it?
Looks the same? Do you think that's recyclable?
What is it? What is it? What is it? What is it?
It's the container for pens, for ballpoint pens. It looks like the same material, but if you look closely, it's shiny. It's got a little plastic coating on it. We can't recycle it. The same thing, you'll see the toothpaste boxes that your toothpaste comes in. Those we can't recycle. So you can see the necessity for going through this little process of trying to educate people on what is or is not recyclable. This is the challenge that we face. Even if people are enthusiastic about recycling, they end up bringing us things that aren't recyclable, that are trash. And that requires a lot of our volunteer time to try and separate out the garbage from the recyclable materials. Here are a few simple things that you can really do to help us out. Please rinse all your recycled containers after putting them in the bin or cesto. No one wants a plastic container that's had milk in it, which has gone sour, to pick it up at the recycling center. Please just rinse them out. Peel off the plastic labels, as I mentioned. Crush the things. Make sure they don't take up room. Before I continue with the discussion of the environment and the environmental challenges we see before us at the Lake Chapala area and how we hope to address those, I want to talk a little bit about the Fiesta de Ecología we have coming up on February the 5th in Parque La Cristianía. As Steve mentioned before, we're going to have entertainment. And the Latin icons, which Steve mentioned, are being provided thanks to the generosity of the Lake Chapala Society. And we thank them for supporting our effort. We selected Cristianía Park because we want to emphasize our intention to serve the entire municipio, not just Ajijic. And because we hope to attract a very large crowd. Admission is free, and there will be entertainment, as I mentioned. Presidente Alejandro Aguirre will speak. We'll have educational things for the children there, a silent auction to raise funds. So we would really appreciate it if all of you can come. And a further added benefit, we're going to be running bus service from Walmart, just outside of Walmart, to the park and back, just to make it easier for people to get there. And over on the table, just by the gazebo, there are some posters there that are advertising the event. Some are in English, some are in Spanish. Your first volunteer effort, if you have the time, is to pick up one of those posters and put it in a prominent place where you go, either a restaurant, a school, wherever where it will be seen, so we can really promote this event and bring more people to it and educate them on our efforts on recycling. Well, our first mission at MOS is to institute a resilient, universal recycling program for the Chapala area. Our ultimate goal is to significantly go beyond that recycling. It is more than beauty that makes Lake Chapala and Jalisco unique. Our area represents a special ecosystem. Mexico in general is blessed with a lush environment. That's due both to its geographical location and its range of elevation. It reaches up to 18,940 feet. The country contains almost all of the Köppen climate classification zones, and Jalisco is the cherry on the top of that ecological sundae. It contains 29 of the 30 different climate zones, subclassifications. This variability is a key driver of Mexico's tremendous biodiversity. Mexico is home to over 30,000 species of flora. Now that compares to 18,000 in the US and 12,000 in Europe. This places Mexico in 4th place, only behind Brazil, Colombia, and China in terms of diversity. Mexico places first in the whole world for reptiles. We're second for mammalian species, and we're 4th for amphibians. And this bounty of ecological riches is at serious risk. And we, the human species, share that risk. The attractiveness of our location and its attendant growth is putting tremendous pressure on some of our most valued and important resources. The constant building of residences and businesses is stressing our water supply. Yes, it's a big lake, but all that water in that lake goes to Guadalajara. We are dependent on our wells. There is only so deep you can drill, and eventually the well runs dry, if not replenished. I know there was an Open Circle presentation in October on rainwater harvesting as a more sustainable, long-lasting solution to our individual local water problems. This would have to be expanded dramatically to meet the needs of the entire Ribera. However, it is a creative solution, and creative solutions like this need to be explored to create a more sustainable environment. The lake area has also become a major producer of berries and other agricultural products. And all those fertilizers and pesticides, they end up in the lake. So we have a lot of challenges. But I don't want merely to recite a litany of problems without at least offering some hope of solutions. The truth is that the solution lies with us. Perhaps the Lake Chapala area resources are in general under intense pressure. But there is one resource which we have that is in abundant supply, and that is you. Our community has abundance of experience, enthusiasm, and time, not to mention money. We have engineers, financial people, project managers, activists, organizers, all these people that we want to tap into and work in a cooperative and collaborative method to really tackle some of the problems we're facing here at Lakeside. And there are organizations here that have started that are looking at some of these things. Bamboo Warriors, BO2.org, and newly organized Deep Roots Foundation that are all looking at ways we can solve some of these problems. And we want to work with them cooperatively and collaboratively to address some of those problems. Thanks for your attention, and we look forward and hope that you will come to our event in Parque La Cristiania on February 5th for our Fiesta de Ecologia. And just a reminder, we have English and Spanish language posters over on the table by the gazebo. If you take one and help us publicize our event, we'd really appreciate it. If you are also interested in volunteering, either at the Centro de Acopio or at the Fiesta de Ecología on February 5th, or even as a MOS volunteer. We have sign-up sheets that are also over on the table, and we would encourage you to sign up. My sincere hope is more of you will become involved, not only in our recycling effort, but also in our effort to protect our paradise and create a more sustainable environment for all its residents. Thank you for your time and attention. Are there any questions?
Oh yeah, there's some questions. Okay, the way this works, I want to make this announcement before I again forget. We want you to know that, of course, the front gate is how you come in now. It used to be over here, and then we close it at 12 o'clock. If you choose to spend the night, we will not come and get you or help you. About 9:30 tomorrow morning, somebody will help you. Please don't use your cell phone to call anybody here. They will not come for you. So if you don't want to do that, get your ass out of here by 12. Okay, for questions, I have a mic. So we'll do as many as we can, and I'll bring the mic around, and you can speak up. I'm going to start right here.
Thank you very much for your presentation, because it's needed desperately in this village. However, I would like to just say one or two things. The first thing is restaurants. When you take food home, they give you your leftover food in a styrofoam container. So maybe you know what I mean. Of course,
I know exactly what you mean. As a matter of fact, we have a very good friend who brings a little plastic Tupperware container every time he goes out to eat. If he has something left over, he hasn't put it in the container. Now, some of the restaurants are getting better. They're coming up with what we call compostable containers. But even those, unless they're properly recycled, if they go into the landfill and they're not composted, they're going to create more methane and more problems.
the second thing is in individuals' homes. If you don't have double containers for the recyclables and the trash, I don't know how that would work if you put everything in one container.
Here's what we did in our house in Wellesley. And you can do it maybe in your pantry here. We were fortunate. We had a little bench seat in the kitchen that lifted up. And we put paper bags for each one of the different areas of recycling. And in those days, you could recycle the paper bags as well at the Wellesley dump. But what I'm recommending is you get bags like this. You put them in your pantry, and you can also get them online, and they're reusable. And you separate, and if you just separate by plastic, the cardboard is flat. You really don't need a bag for that. The chipboard, we take paper, but not small paper, just sheets of paper. If you rip up the paper, we can't use it. Because again, the way the recycling process works, the small paper just jams up the equipment.
I have two questions.
Yes,
One,
sir.
where is the recycling center? And two, what happens to the stuff that goes to the recycling center?
First question. It's no longer operating, a place called La Pueblita, which, as I understand it, will soon be owned and turned into a Margaritaville.
Oh no.
Just beyond La Pueblita, on the mountainside on the right-hand side, you'll see there's a little dirt road that goes in there, and there's a sign up that says El Bajío. Just beyond that is a building. That is where our recycling center is right now. When we took over, I finally at least got a sign up. We want one that's up higher. But it shows that MOS is now running the Centro de Acopio.
Question over here, right here.
Well, I have two questions also. First question is, we buy almond milk and soy milk and, I don't know if they're cardboard or plastic containers?
It's called a Tetra Pak.
Okay,
And the Tetra Pak, again, if you wash that out, flatten it, that is recyclable.
great.
Absolutely.
My other question is slightly different. What's your thought about the air quality, since you're talking about problems with the area? Any solutions for that?
Well, those are much longer-term solutions, and I think fortunately here on Lakeside, you have a nice big mountain there. You know, and you see when you go to Guadalajara, you go over that mountain, and you immediately notice the difference in terms of the air quality, in terms of what things look like. Yes, we have a dust problem here during the dry season, but we don't have the issues that a large city like Guadalajara or Mexico City or the large cities in the U.S. have. And again, that's a longer-term solution with doing away with things like the internal combustion engine.
You want to stand up because you're so far back here.
Can you talk about secondary markets and your relationship with them?
When you say, I assume you're talking about secondary recycling markets?
Certainly.
Yes. What we are doing right now is, first of all, when we signed on March 13th, there were some volunteers who were basically helping out at the Centro de Acopio. And one of the primary persons sort of threw the ball over the fence and said, okay, you're formed, take over. So in addition to trying to plan this fiesta, we're trying to get our hands around the recycling at the Centro de Acopio. Aurora and I spent 2 full days out there trying to get our hands around the cardboard so we could get the big bins out to send them to Parque La Cristinería. But we do have one recycler now in Jacotepec who has agreed to take all of our recycling. The cardboard, the paper, the plastic, the aluminum, the metal, and the glass. And for the time being, until we get more organized, to us this makes the most sense. Later on, I would hope to form a recycling cartel where the recyclers come and visit a website and bid on our recycling so we can get more money. But that's much further down the road.
My name is Angel Correa. What I think what is really needed in this town, this is a great program, but it's an education program for the community. Because I have noticed, like in La Plaza, there's some trash containers, but people are not very encouraged to go and try and put it in the container. They just leave it on the benches everywhere. I talked to the delegado on the bench on La Plaza. Why don't you put provisionally additional trash bags or boxes? And he said, we did it once, but people did not cooperate. It has to be continuous education, because there's trash everywhere.
Absolutely. So I was talking to somebody before the talk. I've traveled around the world. I've traveled around Mexico. And there are 2 places that I've been really impressed with. One is Querétaro. I don't know if any of you have been to Querétaro. The cleanest city I have seen anywhere in the world. And I recently had to go to Ciudad Guzman, and again, very, very clean. But you're right, it takes an educational process. And one of the things we've got are volunteers who are going into the schools. Because our feeling is that's where you start, is with the children. And the children nagging their parents about littering and not littering and recycling rather than throwing it in the trash. So that's one of our goals as well, but that will take time.
I'm coming around. I'll be there in a minute.
This is so exciting, thank you. My housekeeper takes the tops off of the plastic containers, and I
Yes.
think she puts them in the heart in the plaza.
Yes.
And she also takes my flattened cans. What happens with those?
Both of those, and again, both of those get recycled. Some of the people have said, well, some people are going around the cestas and they're taking out the aluminum or they're taking out the metal. God bless them. They're going to recycle it. And if they make a little bit of money off of that, that's fine with us. The goal is recycling. It's not who does it, but that the recycling actually gets done.
Thank you. This is not recycling, but about the water in the lake. Apparently, many children die of kidney disease from the local indigenous communities. Do you know what's happening on that?
A lot of that, and there have been several questions and even studies on that. Some of it, is it genetics? Is it the quality of the water? But I know that there are organizations that have been trying to address that issue. And again, we want to, our whole goal is to cooperate with organizations that are out there who are currently working on things like that. Now, the biggest problem I see, and I'm a kayaker, I know Wayne is here, he's a big kayaker. When we go out in the lake these days, you will see periods of time where there is a green algae film all over the lake. And it's because of the increased use of chemical fertilizers that flow into the lake, that feed the algae, that are going to kill a lot of the fish. We need to come up with methods to try and stop that. And there are solutions. One of the easiest solutions, and one of the things we want to do eventually, is set up composting at the Centro de Acopios all over. That is very valuable material that, if used, eliminates the need for that constant use of chemical fertilizers. We're using chemical fertilizers because the soil is depleted. But if we compost, we put that waste, what was normally waste, to a useful purpose to help support new plant growth.
Right here.
Yeah, I think you just answered my question, which is I haven't heard how we can help you deal with organic waste. Now, through composting, you just mentioned, and some way of getting the compost to a central point. The idea is brilliant, I think, to use the compost for the agricultural folks who then could not have to use the chemical fertilizers. So,
and it would give us money. They're spending tremendous amounts of money on chemical fertilizers, which is primarily a petrochemical product. Better to pay us for useful compost, and we solve a couple of problems. We get more money to continue our efforts. They get better soil for their plant growth, and we eliminate the use of the fertilizer.
Right here.
This is kind of a loaded question, and it encompasses the whole lake. I'm sure you thought about it, but having grown up in the Midwest and spent a lot of time in the Northeast and seeing what's happened to some of the lakes where there's agriculture and fertilizer runoff. You can see it in a lake that's 100 acres. You can see it in the farm pond that we used to have on our farm in the Midwest. But too much nitrogen, too much fertilizer is disastrous. And then you throw in whatever type of fertilizers that, I'm going to say it, what are used on the other side of the lake. This may be a problem for Guadalajara more than us, but from what I've seen in my lifetime, scuba diving, things like that, in these lakes, not scuba snorkeling, I'm wondering what's going to happen to Lake Chapala in 20 years. I don't expect you to have the whole answer to that.
I don't have a whole answer, but that's one of the reasons we wanted to form this organization. We realized that it's not just about recycling. As a matter of fact, I want to go into that a little bit. If you think about the R's, the first one is reduce. We need to reduce the amount of things that we are consuming. The second is reuse. Okay, yes, we have certain necessities, but so many things can be reused that are just thrown out. That's why we'd love to set up a take it or leave it like we had in Wellesley here. Believe me, many people in Wellesley, my son set up his man cave based on the items where the Wellesley take it or leave it. Mexicans are very creative. They would love to take these things that we're throwing into the trash, going to the landfill, and don't need to be going there. And the final one is recycle. But if you see our logo, we have a 6-pointed star. So we have 3 more R's. One is we need to restore. We need to restore the environment where it's been ruined or destroyed. We need to renovate things rather than destroy them. And the final R stands for where we live, Ribera. And that's why we have a 6-pointed star as the symbol on our logo.
Right here.
A couple of quick ones. To the west side, what are the hours and days of operation of the Central? Secondly, from me, Christiania Park, that's a big park. Where exactly is the drop-off point there? And again, its hours of operation and days.
Okay, the Centro de Acopio in West Ajijic is open from 9 to 2, Monday through Saturday. Now, as we increase the amount of recycling, we get more money, we want to extend those hours. But right now, that's all we can afford. And if you ever go out there, believe me, poor Benjamin, her sole contract employee, every morning there is recycling and trash, unfortunately, but recycling left outside the gate that he has to clean up every morning. So, you know, there's really no excuse. You can drop it off there, particularly the recycling. Please, no trash, but the recycling you can drop off there. And then in Parque La Cristiania, we searched for a long time to figure out what was the best place to put those bins. So if you know where the license bureau is in Chapala and all Restaurant Row, you follow that road all the way down and there's a big gate there that's on the south end of the park. Just inside are our recycling containers. Now right now, those gates aren't open, except somebody told me they're open from 10 to 2 on Sunday, so maybe they're open right now. But the idea is until we get a Centro de Acopio set up in Chapala, which we're hoping to do soon, we don't want to be overwhelmed because we don't have a truck. One of the things we got, if you look at our big bins, we have these what they call super sacks. The idea is you can pull one out, put another one in, and take that, you tie it up and you take it off to your recycling center, your Centro de Acopio. And right now, and again, this is the struggles of a new organization. I personally went over and I taped on each bin what goes in that bin. So there is a visual. But we're working on having something, you know, laminated that would be on the front of each bin.
That's all we can do. I know we got more questions. Thank you so much. This is fantastic.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully those who came to see Benjamin Franklin weren't too disappointed.